Hello, welcome to Discover Dorico in September 2024. There are more than 70 of these Discover live streams that we've done about Dorico. Today's session is an introduction to Dorico for Finale users. We'll look at some note input options, some features that are similar to Finale, some that are different in Dorico, some of the things that you can maybe change, some of the preferences you can change to make things more similar. My colleagues will be monitoring the live chat. If you have any questions, please put them in there. And I also may be able to get some of those questions at the end of the session. If you aren't watching this session live, because it will be available later, then check out the chapter links that I'll add once the session is finished. And don't forget, on YouTube, you can click on the cog for settings, such as the playback speed, so you can speed me up or slow me down, as well as use shortcut K to pause, J to go back a few seconds, and L to skip forward. And if I hadn't introduced myself, my name's John from the Dorico team here at Steinberg. So let's get started. I can see there's a lot of people in the chat already, so that's probably scrolling a little too fast at the moment for me to look at it, but I think we're okay. Yes, if there's any comments and anything else, then just give me a shout and we'll go from there. If you've got any problems, like I said, with audio or anything else, I can move this a little bit closer. We could get a little bit there. Anyway, are you all okay? Looks like it. If you've got very specific questions, we'll really try and get to some of those as well. So we'll look at that. Right, some questions. So a comment about, can I boost the mic a little bit? I can indeed. We have those kind of controls, hopefully. So let me know if that's any better. I'll move that out of the shot as well a little bit, I suppose. Sound is bad, full of echo. That might just be one person. Let me know if there's any other issues. And we can get those things sorted. While we're talking, if you haven't already looked at various getting started type things, then let's start with that as well, and we can then look at some note input and various other things. Right, so here we go. I'll keep me out of the way down in the bottom corner, and if I get in the way completely, I'll turn me off. So there's this page on our blog, so blog.dorico.com/getting started. I'm going to put this one in the chat as well. And then if you want to start here, it's a very good place to start. Now this page has, if you've not done anything at all, then installing Dorico as a cross-grade from Finale, there's a video here with some details of how to do that. There's also some other videos that will then follow along with that because it's a little playlist. I'm presuming that maybe you've got that far and that you've already installed things. So the next thing on here is a first steps guide. This is created by Lily, who's on our team. And this first steps guide you can either do as an online web help, you can download a PDF, or you can do as a video follow along. And so you get the choice. Now, what this will do is take you into a guided project. The best way to learn Dorico isn't to just import a load of files as MusicXML. We will talk about that today as well. But I wouldn't say that that's the first thing you want to do with using Dorico. You'll probably get frustrated with some other things first. So what I recommend you want to do really is probably do a little project. And a little guided project like this one, the first steps guide, is a good option. Take some time to use one of these options, maybe download the PDF if you want to and follow along with that. There's lots of screenshots, it's lots of pages, but it's because there's lots of screenshots of what to do, how to do it, how to do some note input, all of those kind of things, or where to find things in Dorico, because that's going to be the thing that's going to frustrate you to start off with, is just where to find things and where things are. So whether you follow this session now or not, that first steps guide I think is going to be a good place to go. So after that one, there's then some other useful videos down here. So there's a kind of more generic Learn Dorico in 11 minutes. If you've not got as much time right now and you just want a kind of quick overview, that's a good video. There's a Getting Started series, which is actually for Dorico SE, but it's suitable for any version of Dorico. And there are 3 versions, really, of Dorico for Mac and PC. So there's SE, which is free, there's Elements, and there's Pro. There is also an iPad version of Dorico. But that video series will also kind of take you through getting started and take you through in more steps for things. And then there's things like a specific note input tutorials. So this is a video series of some short videos on how to do various note input things in Dorico, and we're also going to look at some of those things today. But if I don't get the detail that you need today, that note input series is going to be a very good option, and we'll also tell you all the shortcuts for things that you would need to know and various other ways of doing things. So you can click on any of these start watching or the play buttons and watch some of those videos as well. We're also going to look at some of the other things that are available, so things like shortcut cards and posters. So if you when I'm using lots of shortcuts today, if you think, oh, I'd like to know more about what those are, there's these quick reference cards. Now, obviously, I can't see you in person today, so you might want to download one of these. So there's some different sizes of the shortcut quick reference cards that you can download. There's a poster version as well. If you want to put it on the wall, then there's a poster version with lots of shortcuts and things on it. There's also these ones, mouse mats as posters. So again, I can't see you in person today, but if you want to download one of these, maybe even not to make it into a mouse mat, but as a quick reference guide, this tells you what the shortcuts are for various bits of the dialogue for the screen, for all of the things in Dorico. There's some shortcuts in the middle for how to do some things as well. And lots of things down each of the panels down the right-hand side, the left-hand side at the bottom. So that may also be quite useful. So from this Getting Started page, you'll find lots of useful things. We're also going to talk a bit about playback templates and where you can get help from other things as well. So we'll do all of those today. So we've got a lot to cover. If you can't stay for the whole session, that's fine. It'll be available online. Just come back whenever you need it. And we're also going to rerun this session on Monday. So it'll be a slightly later time, about 5 hours later than now. So if you want to watch it live and ask your questions then on Monday, then you can do so. So let's get started. Now I'm going to go here. This is the Steinberg Hub. So when you first load Dorico, you get this Steinberg Hub, and it's got Open Recent, Create New, and Learn. The Learn section also has some hands-on tutorial things in it. It also has some links to videos. Some of them will be in German if they were done by my colleague Marcus. There's also some Tips Tuesday videos in here, and the sessions that we're doing now, and various other sessions that we've done. So lots of videos will be in here. However, you're on YouTube. Press the subscribe button and click on the little bell, and you'll be notified about any new videos that we do, especially new live streams for things. And then you can be up to speed with what's coming out and what's available. There's also links in here to the forum and the manual. So if you want to use those, the forum, you can get in touch with myself and people on the Dorico team and ask questions. And there's also links here to our blog. So if you come through to the blog, then you can find out lots of information for things as well, including translating Finale projects using XML, which we're also going to look at in more detail. I'm going to use the Create New section here. Let's get started and do a little project and put some things in. And let's see how Dorico works and where things are. So this is your templates. You can add your own templates into here. You can see I've added a personal section in here. So you can add in your own template sections, but let's, for now, instead of one of these templates, just go for empty and look right from the very beginning, if you were to set things up, how things would look in Dorico. So I've got an empty project. You can, if you want to, choose your project title and composer. You can type them in here before you start. You can choose your paper size. I'm in the UK at the moment, so mine says page size A4. You might find that yours is on letter or another size in here. You can choose those. You can choose the orientation. You can choose the rastral size, which is the staff size. So 7mm being a default that we've picked. You can change that in here. You can change it later in the layout options from the library menu. There's also projects will use multiple flows, which let's tick it for now, and we'll look at flows briefly as well. You can choose the music font. You'll find our default one in here. You should also find a bunch of Finale ones in here, and if you've installed any others that are also in the Smoofle format, you'll find those as well. So you can use those fonts if you want to. You don't have to change them here. You can change all these things later if you want to. There's also the text fonts, so the default text font, and then things will cascade and flow from there. And the time signatures and key signatures, if you don't want them, you don't have to. Dorico can start open meter if you want. You can start atonal. You can define your own keys and tonal centers and things like that if you want to. But I'm going to just start with the basic defaults here, 32 bars in 4/4 C major, and say create project. Now to start off with, there's no instruments because I didn't choose a template with any instruments. So Dorico says, okay, what do you want to add? Or who do you want to add? To whom is this music? So we have single players, section players, and ensembles. You might say, I don't care. Well, there are a couple of reasons why. You might. Single players are individuals who may double on other instruments, but they're only playing one instrument. So a solo flute, maybe he's going to double on piccolo, maybe they're going to change to clarinet. A reed player in a theatre pit, they're a single player because it's one person to one part. A section player is going to be a group of players. So it'd be like your violin section. Now they might be able to, you might need them to do Divisi. There's a Divisi feature in Dorico. So also the sounds are going to be different. So this for a single player would be a single violin, whereas this would be a section violin, would be a section sound of violins. So Dorico, it can use these options at the beginning to work them out. So we'll just say a single player to start off with. We'll just add a flute. I'm just going to type the word flute. You can search through the families of instruments, but just type the name of the instrument you want and press enter. Now I have a flute player, and this flute player is holding a flute. I can press the plus button and I can give them other instruments if I want to. So if I want to give them a clarinet, for example, then I can give them a clarinet. Now I have a flute and clarinet player with 2 instruments. I can separate them later. I could join them together later if I wanted to. Doesn't matter. You can do it whenever you like. Let's say also down here, behind me, bear with me a second. I just get me out of the way. Here we go. So we've got down here, right in the bottom corner down here, we have this add single player, add section player, and add ensembles. So I'm going to say I'm going to add a single player as well. I'm going to add a piano. You can add all of your section players, or you can also use the ensembles option. So if I choose ensemble here and type strings, and there's various different types of ensembles, but it's a quick way of adding a string section so that you can add lots of people all at the same time, and they all get added to your project here, and you can sort the order of these people. So there's a button here for whether you want to sort them and whether they're being sorted into a jazz or orchestral order or a band order. So now we've got all of these people. So I have a flute who's going to double on clarinet. The clarinet can show up in a second. The piano and the strings. And then Dorico will load all of the sounds automatically for you so that you don't need to worry about them. Which sounds we will come on to later. But by default, it's going to load from the Dorico default set. So this is setup mode. Now we have these modes across the top. You can click on these buttons to switch modes. You can also use shortcuts Command 1 2 3 4 5 or Control 1 2 3 4 5. And as we looked at in this earlier, see it says Control/Command and 1 2 3 4 5 for these buttons. So this is how our shortcuts basically work. We often put the PC and then the Mac shortcut so that they're very similar often between them, and how the options work. So I can switch modes here. So now I'm in write mode. So now in write mode, this is what we call page view. If you have a trackpad, you can pinch and zoom. There's also zoom options in the bottom right hand corner down here. You can also scroll with a mouse. You can have options if you want it to scroll left and right if you hold down shift. You can hold down command and you can scroll in and out with a mouse as well if you have a scroll wheel. So there's multiple options. There's shortcuts like control plus and minus as well to zoom in and out. All sorts of There's many ways of doing the same thing, depending on which devices you have in front of you and how you want to use them. Dorico is designed very well to work on a laptop as well. So if you're just using a trackpad and a laptop and you don't have a numeric keypad and multiple screens, that's fine. But if you do have multiple screens, you can also separate things out into other screens if you want to. I probably won't do too much of that today because we're just using one screen. So for note input, now the first thing you'll find in Dorico is when you do note input, and I'm going to do this by choosing a note up here in the flute, and I'm going to press the enter key. And I get this caret line. I'm just going to turn off this little C major sign for a second, which is called a signpost. So I'm going to hide signposts. I've got a little shortcut for that as well that I've set. So now I've got this caret line. Now when the caret line is on, you can input notes. If I press escape or press enter again, I can turn the caret line off. I can also double click somewhere and it will turn the caret line on. That means I can input notes. If the caret line isn't on, then I'm editing the notes that are already there. Now when you do this by default in Dorico, you'll find that this little arrow isn't on and you'll get this little ghost note for your mouse. So if you want to, you can put notes in just using the little ghost note, and you can literally just click in on the page here and Dorico will add the notes. Now it's adding them just because it's adding here. It's got a quarter note defined, and that was the default. And you can see at the top here we've got a rhythm grid, and the rhythm grid is changeable in the bottom left corner down here. You can change the rhythm grid. You can change it to sixteenths or quarters or whatever. Eighths is the default, and so you can see the strong and weak beats in the bar, and you can then put them in. So you don't really in Dorico need to enter rests, because wherever you put this note, it's going to position it and add the other rests in for you. The mouse is not the quickest way of doing it, and I turn the mouse off by default. In the Dorico preferences, which on the Mac is here in Dorico preferences, there's note input and editing options, and it includes options for things like note input. And by default, I've turned off mine. It's also the same as pressing this little arrow here. So now this is selecting things, but I'm not inputting notes on the staff. I don't have that little ghost note anymore. It's an option. Some people like it. A lot of people who I know turn it off, but your choice, your choice. Lots of these things are going to be your choice on how you do things. So let's do some other options. So I've still got this rhythm grid, and I can use the arrow keys to move left and right. Now, if you're using Microsoft Word and you use the arrow keys move around. They move up and down, so they move up and down to other instruments, and they move left and right along the rhythm grid. And every time I press left, it's going that way. Every time I press right, it's going that way, and I'm moving along the rhythm grid. Now, this is the defaults in Dorico. You can change these options. Don't get annoyed with them to start off with. You can change them, but I'm going to show you the defaults and then how we can change things. So I'm also going to use, for these note durations, instead of using your mouse to select these note durations here, we've put the note durations across the top of the keyboard. So again, if I show you just the this option here, these are the default notes, and that's because you've got a short note on the left, you've got a long note on the right, and we go from very short notes up to breathes, because when we were doing this, it made sense to do it this way. Now, this is different to many other systems. It's different to Finale, it's different to Sibelius. It's not just because we want to be different, it's because these make sense to start off with. You can change them, don't panic, but this is why they're the defaults. So the numbers across the top of your keyboard are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, minus and equals, because this one has a sharp on the same key if you look. So you've got kind of, flats and sharps and naturals as well. And it means you can go all the way up to breathes and you can go all the way down. Now, if you want to make 5 the default shortcut for this, that's fine. It means you might lose one of the very short notes off the bottom. You can change these if you want to. You can also use your numeric keypad and you can make those. If it's a muscle memory thing, that's fine. No problem. You can change them. You will change them by going to the Dorico preferences, or if you're on a PC, it's in the edit menu and preferences, and you go to key commands. That's the Steinberg words for shortcuts, and in here you can search for any of the options. So for example, the note input options, and you can find in here, it's probably better to search for it than anything else. You can search in here for the various options you want. So for example, like a quarter note, so the note input and editing, and you can change things in here and say what you want to move them by, how long, what you want all the shortcuts to be, and you can find the options that you want in here for whatever you want and change them. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm going to leave them on the defaults, show you how it works. So if I press 6, I get a quarter note. If I press 5, because I'm moving to the left, I get a shorter note. If I press 4, it's a shorter note. So I can choose these. Now, again, I'm choosing the duration first, and then if I press a letter like A, then I can enter that on the page. And I can move that note, but of course the arrow keys by default are moving the caret. So I can press Option or Alt on some computers, and then I can move that note up and down. You can do it afterwards. I'll show you the other method in a second. So I've entered an A, and then I can press B, C, D, E, F, G on my keyboard. So literally what I'm doing on here is I'm literally pressing A, and then it's going to the next closest A. And if I press D, it's going to the next closest D. And if I press B, it's going to the next closest B. And then I'm using Option and the arrow keys to move these up and down. If I want to go in octaves, I can use Option and Command, and I can move these in octaves. So this is, like I said, this is just the default way, and then we'll look at various other ways, and we'll look at using a MIDI keyboard as well. Sometimes you have a MIDI keyboard, sometimes you don't. Now, as a Finale user, you're probably used to doing pitch first before the duration. So you can do this, and there's this button here on the left-hand side, and the shortcut is K. So if you just press the letter K, then you can toggle that option. Okay. Now, when this is on, I can now say I want a D, and it appears as a little ghost note, and then I can choose a duration. So I can say maybe I want 7. So that's giving me a half note. And then I can go to 5, and I'll get another D. Now, you can move these around if you want to, but of course you can't use the arrow keys because that by default is moving the caret. But when you're entering notes like this, you can press Option and the arrow keys. And I can change these. So I can move them. So now if I do this, I say 5, and we're going over here now because we've moved on. So I can just say 5 for entering eighth notes. So at the moment, the main difference to Finale is that I'm pressing Option and Enter. I'm just keeping Option held down here on my keyboard, and then I'm using the arrow keys, and then it's very similar to how you do it in Finale. Now, we are looking into, but I don't have it working right now today, an option of just using the arrow keys for this. So if you're saying, oh, but the method I use only uses the arrow keys, then okay, we're looking into that one so that you'll be able to do that one as well. You can use the arrow keys, for example, to go right, so you don't need to enter rests, and then I can just enter another note here. And when I've said quarter note, Dorico says, okay, well, a quarter note here with nothing else following it and nothing else around it actually should be 2 tied eighths. So, but it may be that Dorico changes its mind later on. So, for example, if you said we wanted to start here and we want a quarter note, then it may be that Dorico will change its mind later on and do something later on. So, and that's all based on the notation options. Now you can lengthen and shorten notes. So if I use Option Shift, then I can lengthen this along the rhythm grid. So this note is getting longer by eighth notes every time I press this arrow key. Whether you want double dotted notes or not is also an option in engraving options. So all of these are things that you can set. If you decide that's not the default you want, you can change them and set them as your own defaults. So let's have a look at doing that. In the library menu, when you go to engraving options, in here, when you go to notation options, there are note grouping options for what you want to happen. So if you're getting this and you wanted this, or vice versa, just change it here once. If you want this, or you want it to split at the half bar, you can change it, and this is based on whether or not it's in 4/4 or not. These ones are simple time signatures with or without a half bar. There's various options. This option here is the maximum number of rhythm dots. So if I just take that, do that. Now you see we only get 1 rhythm dot, so Dorico's changing it again. So don't instantly say, oh, I just want to change this particular thing. There is an option called force duration, and force duration will do those kind of things for you, where you can just say, I really, really want this here right now, thank you. But you're making more work for yourself in many cases. If you use the notation options, set the options you want, and then press the Save as Default. From that point on your computer, all your new projects will use that as your default, and that's going to be a quicker way of working. So if the defaults that we've set aren't exactly what you want, that's fine. Just change the option, press Save as Default, carry on working, and you'll be fine. So I can make these notes longer and shorter. So for example, if I wanted to enter a note here, and I wanted a note that was a full bar long or a bar and a half, then you can edit all of these options, change them all, and Dorico is very flexible. When you move a note around, I'm just using Alt and the left and right arrows, it will rewrite that, it's going over here now, to be correct for that length of note. So this is one note in Dorico. It's also one note if you're using things like a DAW, like Cubase, Logic, those kind of sequences. And at the bottom down here, there's this little arrow. I can open this, and there's a properties panel, and there's a note input option for a piano keyboard and guitar and drums and a mixer. There's also a key editor down here, and this is saying, look, this is one note, if I just make this a bit bigger. So here are the other notes that we've entered, and Dorico is showing you graphically how long these notes are. So if you make them longer or shorter here too, then it's also changing them here. If you drag them around here, then it's also changing them here. So there's lots of options for people who want to control things in a playback kind of way down here. Very quickly while we're down here though, this is showing you the notated durations. There's also an option here to show you the played duration. So I can make the note sound shorter or sound longer. And you can see here it's not actually changing the notation. If I go to notation, then when I change it, I can make the note longer or shorter, and it will change the notation. So you get the choice of. It's very useful for doing mock-ups because you can make fine tweaks to how it sounds without having to change all of the notation. If you do things like, for example, select this bar, and I'm just clicking between the notes, you see like this, then when I add things like a slur and press S, then it will add a slur here, but also in playback land down here, it will make all of these notes slightly longer so they all overlap. And if I take the slur away, then it will make them all slightly shorter again so that they're all slightly detached. And that will also affect playback. So there's those kind of considerations, but that also is a consideration for note input and where things go. Now, like I said, so some of these things, the things in particular with speed entry, we are going to look at trying to make that work so that you can just use the arrow keys. But at the moment, it's very similar. I'm just going to, with K turned on, so I've got this pitch before duration on, then I can just use, I can enter a note and I can press Alt and the arrows and I can move those up and down and change those. So, you know, so it can be very similar from that point of view. There's also options, for example, if you're entering notes, let's go back here to this bar, and you wanted to enter chords, for example. Yeah, let's do that bar. Actually, that one will make sense. If I press Q for chords, then the chords button light comes on here. And so now I can enter chords and it won't delete what was already there. So if I enter a new note, I can move this up and down again as I did before with Alt, and I can enter more notes into here, and Dorico will then decide, oh, I've got dotted notes on. Let me turn off the dotted notes. The shortcut for the dotted notes is period, full stop. There we go. So I can enter notes this way as well if I wanted to. And add them because I've got Q chords turned on. If I press Q again and turn it off, then it will turn them off. You can also do similar options if you, let's just change some of these notes so they're different. There we go. I'm using Alt and up and down to change those ones. You can also, let's say, change notes if you've got them for another instrument. I'm just alt-clicking down here, but there are also options for cut, copy, paste. So you can select something, you can press Control-C like you would in Microsoft Word. You can choose the violin part and press Control-V like you would in Microsoft Word. There are options for, in the Edit menu here, when you do Paste Special, there's also Move to Staff Above, Move to Staff Below, Duplicate to Staff Above, Duplicate to Staff Below, and Swap. So if you've made changes like, let's say this one is moved slightly and you select both of these, then when you go up here and do Paste Special and you go Swap, then it will swap them both over. So there's options like that too. And if you make changes or want to make changes, for example, you want to leave all the rhythms exactly as they are, then you can also use the options over here. So for example, I was talking about forced duration, and the one above it is lock duration. What lock duration does, or L, is it gives you this dotted line here. And now when you enter new pitches, MIDI keyboard, or however you want to do it, I'm going to use my QWERTY keyboard and press D, E, then it's going to change those pitches, but it's going to keep all the rhythms exactly the same. So if you would need to make harmonic changes that way, you can do that with lock durations. If you want to use a MIDI keyboard when you're entering notes, so if I turn the caret on, depending on whether you want to do pitch before duration or not, you can play notes on your MIDI keyboard. So let me just show you on this one. I'm now using a MIDI keyboard here and pressing pitches on here. And of course it applies to chords as well if you want to do chords. And then when you press a duration, then that's what you'll get on the keyboard. If you want to do, let's say, multiple instruments all at the same time, you can choose notes. In fact, a clever one to do is if you choose the stem, because it will choose a whole chord. I'm going to make that slightly longer. And then you can copy these, and when you paste them down here, there are options like paste and explode. So it will explode one note each for all of the string players, which is okay. But if you know you wanted to do that at the beginning, then when you're inputting the notes, so I turn the caret line on here, and I can press Shift and the down arrow, and I can extend the caret over multiple staves. And then I can choose a note value. I'm going to do it in the kind of the Dorico default way. So I'm going to choose a note value first. And then all the notes I play on my MIDI keyboard, they're going to be input, so it's playing chords, and they're putting those one note onto each of the string players. So if you know you want that to start off with, you don't need to start with chords at the beginning on one staff. You can automatically explode them over multiple instruments. And that applies whether they're transposing or not, whether they're different types of instruments, it really doesn't matter. You can do all of those at the same time. You can also do things like when you're entering dynamics. So if I choose a note here, there are these panels on the right hand side for various things that you can enter in Dorico. So there's one here for clefs, and when I clicked on this it popped out the clefs option, and there's one for key signatures and time signatures and tempos, and there's a dynamics one here. So you can choose the dynamics from here, and because the note was selected it's put it here. However, popovers are used quite a lot in Dorico to speed things up. What's a popover? So if I select a note and I press Shift D for dynamics, then I get this thing. This is called a popover. And if I press, for example, MF and press enter, it'll put MF. Now the reason, I'll just show you again on here. So all of these shortcuts down the right hand side are all Shift and something, all of these. So Shift C, clefs, K key signatures, meter, time signatures are meter, tempo, because you can't use time signatures as T, so tempo is T, dynamics Shift D. So you can also use them over multiple notes. So if I select from here, hold down Shift and select this bar, so I've selected all of these notes. And then I'm also going to select all the way down to here, so I'm going to press Shift and select all of these notes. Then when I press Shift D, I get the dynamics popover, and I could type my MF. But I could also type things like a hairpin, so the greater than, less than symbol on your keyboard, and F, and you can enter the dynamics for all of those instruments all at the same time. So things like that, if you know that's what you wanted in the end. And Dorico is also spacing these things automatically based on the available space on the page, where you are. It's got to a justification point, and we've got other YouTube sessions on the leading layouts, so how to create very good layouts and what the options are and what you want to change. But you'll actually need to drag staves around and position things a lot less in Dorico, I think, than you would in lots of other programs. There's also a couple of quick other options. So if I add things like slurs with an S, you can also add things like articulations. So on an individual note, there are some buttons down here for articulations. They all have shortcuts too, so I can do this. And you can even, I suppose if you really wanted to, you could add things like staccato dots. Maybe let's not do that. Let's use my shortcut and shorten that one. So you can add various articulations and things to these if you want to. And then when you have all of these notes here, if you copy them, so Control C, when you go to the other instruments here, because you want them all to be the same, then there's an option in the edit menu for paste special, which is paste articulations. So you can then paste just the articulations. Leaves all the notes, but it pastes just the articulations onto those other notes. So that will save you, in some cases, doing a filter. You can't filter articulations in Dorico. Partly, I suppose, maybe you don't need to too much. But I mean, some cases maybe you do. But you can't filter articulations, but you can paste just the articulations onto other instruments, which is quite useful. If you're not sure where some of these things are that I'm doing and when I'm using various things, then another good option is the jump bar for things. So we're going to look at that as well. But a couple of things that are kind of quite similar, but maybe naming things are a little bit different from Finale. So when we were putting in these notes, we kind of used a similar input method to Finale, but maybe these bottom, I mean, I know this is a flute. They're not supposed to be playing chords anyway, are they? So let's say this was a piano part. These notes here, if I just select these, I'm holding down Command just to select these individual notes here. You can use what you would probably have used, I think, is layers in Finale. You can use voices in Dorico. So what I mean is you can have multiple different rhythms on the same staff. I won't go into all the details about how those work, but basically in Dorico, when you're inputting here, you've got an upstem voice. And I use Shift V to create this lower voice. And now I can just press V and toggle between the available voices. So I can add notes down here, and then I can also, if I go back here, and toggle that, and say I wanted to put something else above it, then you can have two voices very easily. You can actually have as many voices as you like. Be careful with voices because you can start creating too many. You can also show these as voice colors if you want to. So Dorico can very colorfully show you all of the different voices and things that you've got. And there are videos in that Note Input series that Anthony's done about voices and how to do all those kind of things. So layers are voices really in Dorico when you're searching for things. Other similarities. Now, playback-wise, Dorico has picked all of the default sounds that Dorico uses. It does that really in play mode. And in here, it's picking. It's using the Hallian Sonic player, which is our default player. There's a little E button here to edit the instrument, and you can see all of the instruments that it's loaded by default. So, that's a very large pop out I've got there. I don't need that bit right now. There we go. So it's going to show you all of the instruments that are loaded into each of the slots. These are MIDI channel slots. I suppose it's a little like the ARIA player. You can edit any of the individual instruments and it will show you about this particular instrument. There's a keyboard at the bottom to show you what's going on. And in play mode at the bottom, you've also got the mixer here. If you want a bigger mixer, you can press F3, or you can press this button up here and get a larger mixer if you needed to see a larger version of it. So we've loaded all of the samples automatically into here from the Halion Sonic player, and they sound pretty nice. But you can use other sounds if you want to. The first thing you might want to use, for example, is the Garritan sounds that you had from Finale. So when you are in our Getting Started page here, so blog.dorico.com/getting started, or if you go to our blog and you click on the resources page, then there's also a link to our playback templates. And a playback template is basically a preset template that we or somebody else has made, sometimes the manufacturers have made, from various companies for the libraries that they own. So you're not buying the library at this point, but because, for example, with GPO5, you can get a playback template for that. So you already have Finale, you already have Garritan, so that you can use that with Dorico. You can click on the link, and there's a Jazz and Big Band one as well. Download that playback template. It then shows up in Dorico here in the play menu in playback templates. Now I have quite a lot of playback templates in here because I've been doing some others for various other libraries as well, but you would have a smaller list which would then include GPO5. The factory ones are our defaults, so you can go back to those at any point, but if you just choose GPO5 and press apply and close, Dorico will unload all of our sounds and it will automatically load all of the sounds into Garritan, into the ARIA player, and you can use the same sounds that you had in Finale if you want to use those. You may also have NotePerformer with Finale. When the NotePerformer installer first ran, you choose which program you want to use it with. If you only chose Finale initially, just rerun the installer. In fact, there may be a newer version, so you can go to NotePerformer's website and get the latest version. Install that one and choose Dorico as well, and it will put the playback template in for Dorico. So then in here, you will also have, under N, NotePerformer, and you can just choose NotePerformer, press apply and close. Dorico will unload all of the sounds you've got and reload all of the sounds for NotePerformer. And we're just going to press close. I don't need to do that right now. If you ever have any sound problems with things not quite loading properly or you're not quite sure, then the default option to go is just to go to playback template and just press apply and close, because that will reload the current selected template and make sure things are working properly. And if things really aren't, if you've got no sound at all, go to the edit menu and device setup. And in the device setup dialog, you can choose, make sure you've chosen the right output. You may have multiple options listed, so make sure you choose the right output as the ASIO driver and the stereo output, and that should be all you need to do. Dorico will potentially have a different output listed here than the one your computer is using by default, so that might be a good first step to go, or just doing the playback template. You can mix and match playback templates. We've got other sessions on this channel for how to create playback templates, how to do mix and matching of playback templates. You can use VSL sounds, you can use BBC Spitfire sounds, you can use all sorts of different sounds, and you can mix and match your favourite libraries, because Dorico is just using all of the VST instruments that you could possibly want, and you can use those in Dorico. Now, and without going into too much of the detail, it's also doing things for playback. So where I said when you add a slur, it's also switching to a legato sample. If you add a staccato dot, it's switching to a staccato sample. It's doing those kind of things as well. If you've got samples that do, flautando and things like that, then Dorico will switch those for you automatically as well. Now, a few other things then. So that's kind of, hopefully familiar territory so far. There's some note input things. You can make them very similar to Finale if you want to, and hopefully with an update that we'll do soon, a free update, then you'll also may be able to use the up and down arrows a bit more easily. But at the moment, just hold down Option and you can use those. Quicker MIDI options, quicker input options with MIDI probably are the quickest way of doing things in Dorico. So, for example, choosing a note value and playing notes on your MIDI keyboard is going to be the quickest way, fat fingers, is going to be the quickest way of entering notes, really, whether you're using pitch before duration or not. You can do it this way. It's still quicker with a MIDI keyboard, I think, to enter notes. If you're looking for the absolute fastest way, but you don't always have a MIDI keyboard, you might not be a keyboard player, that's okay. There are lots of other options you can do and change you can change your shortcuts if you need to. So some of the things that are a bit different in Dorico and that maybe kind of initially a bit more confusing, or terminology that is a bit new. So when you want to move things around on the page, you might want to kind of click on the score and drag things to move it around. You get this box which is selecting things. At the bottom corner of the bottom edge of the screen down here, there's a little hand tool. If you click on the hand tool, now clicking on the score is the default way of moving the item around. And if you hold down Shift, then you can do dragging and making selections this way. So maybe that's your default, that's your favorite, and you can just change it down here as to what your default is, switch them over at any point. I quite like the option to do this just with my mouse, because I use a trackpad and 2 fingers to move around, so I don't need to click on the score and drag it. But if you're using a mouse, then you might want to click on this option here, so that then the hand tool and clicking on things is the default. Another of the things that's a bit different is that when we've entered things in Dorico, let's say like this slur, in fact let's enter a longer one. Click on this bar, press S, there we go, we've got 2 slurs. Now if I go to engrave mode, this now gives me full Bezier control over the slur. So in write mode, when I move this, it's only moving to each of those individual notes. But if I go to engrave mode, I now get full graphical control over things. So Dorico has that as an extra mode, if you like, because a lot more of the time Dorico will put things in the right places for you, and you won't need to be tweaking things. And actually, the default positions of things are often in the library engraving options dialog as to how far away slurs are from each other, what the curvature is, and those kind of things. So really, you want to set those in there first. But if you need to make tweaks to things, then you can do that in engrave mode. Similarly with things like dynamics. So when I entered the dynamics here, in write mode, when I enter the dynamics, if I click and drag this, it's going to move it to the next note when I drag it. And you see, because these all get linked together, they get linked together between all the parts, and they're grouped together for this instrument, then they're all moving at the same time, which is sometimes useful, sometimes you don't want to. So you can right-click, you can tell the dynamics to ungroup, and you can tell them to unlink if you don't want to do that. Now, if I want to make a small graphical change to these, again, sometimes there are options in the library menu, in engraving options for dynamics as to exactly how they're positioned. But if you need to make overrides to things, then in engrave mode, you can drag these individually. Now, they're still linked and grouped, so they're all changing. So you might want to unlink them first. But if you need to make small graphical changes to these, or to slurs, or to articulations, or to various other things, you can do that in engrave mode. It's your kind of graphical tool. And if you come from Finale, then actually you're probably quite used to a lot of those graphical changes. So when there are occasions when you need to do them, then you can make them here. Now, one thing I would watch out for as well is that down here it says set local properties locally, globally. So when you're changing things, you're only changing them locally, which means you're only changing them in this one layout, in this one score, not in the parts. Your parts list is here, so you can click on the parts. But also, if you have something selected here and you just press W, then you can jump straight to the part. And this is the default part look. So there's very little actually you may need to change for things, but if you need to, then you can. And now you can change this differently for the part as you would for the score, because of whether the options are set to local or global. So you get options. Maybe you want to change them more globally, change that option first. But those options are there in the properties panel, and you can open and close that panel also with a shortcut, which is Command 8. Again, I'll refer you to this option here and lots of the shortcuts, and it says show hide lower zone. Shouldn't call it the bottom panel. The lower zone is Command Control 8. So we've got some parts in here. Now we've also got things like titles and other things going on in engrave mode. So all of these are text boxes. And basically this is like a desktop publishing system. So if I go to the frames tool, I can now choose these frames and I can decide where I want all of these items to be. I don't recommend you do it in here, because really what you want is consistency. You want them to follow a template. So in the bottom right hand side here, you can see we have templates. So there's a set of templates for the parts. And if I just go back to the score, I'll do it this way for a change. Then we have a set of templates for the score. So if I double click on first, this is the first page template, We don't know at this point if you're going to use a left or a right page, so you can define one or both. You can copy the layout if you need to between whichever one you do. But this is where you can define. We call these areas, these items tokens. There's lots of tokens you can use. When you double click in here and get the little flashing line, then you can just right click and choose from various tokens that you can use in here. So there's project titles, project lyricist, project composer. At the bottom down here there's project copyright. Lots and lots of other options you can use in there. Define your template once, and then the subsequent pages use the default template. So here is all the default pages. So there's a little page token in the top right, but maybe you want to put it at the bottom. You can define in here exactly what you want your template to look like. You can import and export templates. You have lots and lots of options for things that you can do in here. Did I just show you earlier these hand tools and it was covered up with the keyboard? Apologies if I did that. Anyway, when I was moving things around in here and I chose the hand tool, had I covered that up with the? I apologise. So anyway, so you can define your page templates because really consistency is the thing. And then you'll find that your parts all follow the same templates. So you only have to do it once, and then you can add graphics or anything else if you want to. And you only need to do it once and then define your page templates and everything will then follow. If you started to drag things around manually in here, you will find you'll get a little red triangle. So let's say this page here, for some reason, I wanted to make it smaller or put it somewhere else on the page. So I'm dragging the edge of that box. So now I've changed just one page. Now you can see I've got an override. And that means we're no longer following the templates. Probably don't want to do that. So I'm going to choose this, right click on it, remove all page overrides, and now it goes back to following the template. So I think that's, the desktop publishing system there is certainly something that's a bit different in Dorico. When you're other things that might be a bit different, you're thinking there's so many things and options and I don't know where they are. So I mentioned the jump bar. You can choose things. Let's say we want to filter something. We want to filter out these bottom notes in this second voice here, or these bottom notes here. Let's do this one. So you could find and edit, filter, notes in chords, second notes, all these kind of options. Or you can just press J for the jump bar and you can start typing the thing you want. So I would like to filter, and I would like to filter the bottom. Oops, bottom, fifth from bottom. Yeah, you can choose all of the options. So bottom note or single notes, let's do that one. And you can set little shortcuts. See, when I press J again, it's remembered the thing I did, the last thing I did, which is really useful. And also, when you're doing these things and you say, for example, filter bottom, you can set your own shortcuts, so FB. So actually, all I need to type into here now is FB, and it will filter the bottom notes. So you can fire off really quick commands and shortcuts for things, and the only shortcut you actually need to remember is J. So if you wanted to filter a voice, you can say J, and I wanted to filter a voice. Upstem voices, downstem voices, all slash voices, there's lots and lots of options. And look, some of these I've started to add shortcuts for. So filter all downstem voices is now an option, and it's filtered them. So maybe I want to copy those somewhere else, I want to do something else to them. And next time I want to use it, if I just press J, that's the thing that comes up because it's remembered what I'd done. So it's saying, oh, would you like to filter all the downstem voices again? So J is a really, really useful shortcut. And I asked some people online in some of the Facebook groups, what are the things that you've learned about Dorico now that you wish you knew at the beginning? And that certainly came up as something that people wanted. The jump bar, just press J, and then it will automatically, when you start typing, find you the thing that you wanted, which is really useful. Another one actually was lock duration. So when you've entered a bunch of pitches and you want to change them, then you can do lock duration, just press L, and when you type in other pitches, it keeps all the rhythms exactly the same, but it's just changing the pitches, and that was another one that somebody really liked. Another one somebody really liked was the intervals option. So when you choose some notes, one or more notes, doesn't matter, and you can press Shift-I for intervals, then the one option is you can just press 3, and you'll get a third. But really, you probably want some other options. So when I do Shift-I, I can also, they said some of their favourites was things like you can do a -3, so you can do a third down, comma, and you can say things like an augmented fourth and a minor seventh. And so you can build up chords just by naming them basically in there. Oh, it's lovely. Maybe not. But you can build up intervals and things like that using the intervals popover, which may be very useful. There's also some other things that Dorico does that are a little bit different. So the first one actually is in setup mode. When you're first setting up all of these instruments, there's this thing called flows. I know even at the beginning in the hub, right at the very beginning in the hub, I said project will use multiple flows. I didn't explain what it was. Now flows are independent sections of music. It could be movement 1, movement 2, movement 3. It could be song 1, song 2, song 3. They're independent options. It could also just be an ideas space. So if I press this button here for flows, we've got flow 1 now and we've got flow 2. So this is a new piece, if you like. It's got its own title in the same project. Maybe this is just an ideas space. So if I choose flow 2, I can untick the players that I don't want to be in it. So here, if I untick all of these, now I've just got an idea space for piano. Dorico's open meter by default, so I can just put in my note row into here of things that I might want. Oh, I'm doing the wrong note input system for me. And I can choose whichever notes I want them to be. You can also change the... I've got dotted notes on, I didn't want them. So if I press I for this little tool here, it's the insert option. When I turn off the dots, then it'll get rid of the rhythm dots. What's insert mode doing? So insert mode, let's say we want to put this into some time, Shift M and say 3/4. Or maybe we say 6/8. So Dorico will rewrite things. It knows, for example, 6/8 should have the middle of the bar shown differently, that kind of thing. So if I want to insert something into here, so now I've got I turned on. This is I on and off, on, off. Now I can insert notes into the middle of this bar. So I don't need to move these notes out the way first. I can just say in the middle here, I would like to put some more notes, please. And it will push all of the other notes out the way. And if I press delete or backspace, then it will pull them back in again. If I don't do that, if I didn't have insert mode on, then when I enter a new note, it would delete the ones that were already there, which probably isn't what you want, so use insert mode. But be careful with insert mode. There are videos on insert mode that Anthony has done, much more detail about insert mode, but it can also do things like that note was supposed to be dotted, and whether you wanted it to be, whether you didn't want it to be, you can make those decisions later. Dorico is much more flexible than a lot of other systems for composition and actually changing your mind later on and the things that you want to do. Another couple of quick things that I want to show you, and I'll do this with projects that are already done. So one is an option called condensing. What's condensing? So condensing is when you've got an awful lot of instruments and you want to fit them on a score like this. If you weren't using... Oh, also there's a video feature in Dorico. Yes, hello videos. So if I choose an object, doesn't matter, the big time signature, a note, doesn't really matter, a bar line, and press P, that's where Dorico will play from. And you can add videos and that kind of thing to it. We won't do too much of those today, but if you want to add videos and keep them in sync and all of those kind of things, then you can do. The video window is this little option here, and you can attach them to a flow. There are more videos on that online. Now, when you've got a big project like this one, so in setup mode, we've got lots and lots and lots of instruments, including 12 French horns and multiple brass and anything else. All of these normally wouldn't fit on a score. So here is a score where we've tried to fit them all on. 12 French horns in the middle here, and the woodwinds up here, etc., etc. Now, what you want to do is create a smaller version of this score. So you just go to Edit, Condensing, and Dorico looks for the items, the players, the people, the instruments that are the same and condenses them automatically. So here you can see now, in fact this is a good example here, we've got 2 flutes here, we've got 3 tin whistles, which it's actually put on 2 staves, the oboes aren't playing, the clarinets it's put all onto 1 stave because they're all playing the same, all of the same rhythms, and the French horns it's put them all on the same staff. Now you can define, I've got more scores in this project, so you can have multiple layouts, no problem. And in this one, I've decided that I want the condensing to work in a different way. So I've said the horns need to go A6 and A6 for those two, and the clarinets can stay as they are, and the flutes and the tin whistles, you can define what you want the labels to look like, how you want them to condense, whether you want them to condense the same way all the way through the project, or just for these 2 bars. You can define all of these things yourself. So the condensing option for making a short score is really useful, but it does mean that really what you're starting with is multiple instruments. Now, when you do multiple instruments and the paper's too small, you will get all sorts of collisions and things. Now, one quick way of solving this is if you just go to Galley View. Galley View shows you all of the instruments and they all have a default amount of space. So Galley View is like Scroll View. You can just write for the music that you want to write for, and Dorico will worry about the page layouts and everything else later on. It will worry about the condensing and those kind of things later on. When you're in page view, you really need to have enough space. And if you import a file or there's just not enough space, you need to change the staff size, you might go to the library layout options, and this is where you can change your rastral size, the staff size, and that kind of thing. But also condensing, if you just go edit condensing without changing the staff size, may also potentially make things fit because you've got less staves on the page now and how things work. Now this is where, when I was entering those string notes earlier and I was entering them for all of the instruments at the same time, that's really useful, because if you're going to be doing condensing, let's go back to Galley View, we've got, for example, our flute players here. So if I zoom in, we've got flute 1 and we've got flute 2 who's also doubling on piccolo at times. So I can write the notes for flute, or if I undo that, I can write notes for both flutes, and now it will condense them automatically when I need to because they're the same. Or if I delete those again, I can write chords for flutes because I've got the caret on 2 lines. And now Dorico's writing, you're writing for those 2 instruments or all 12 horns or whatever it is you need, and then Dorico will just condense them together automatically later. So you don't need to start out with writing chords and exploding them. You can write for the individual instruments and let the Dorico condensing option put them back together for your short score, your condensed score. If I just, in this project, also for a second, go down here, in fact, let's leave Galley View on for a minute. There's a shortcut for Galley View as well, so if you like Galley View, you can use a shortcut for that one. Right at the bottom down here, you can also see in our string section, oops, missed. In our string section, we've got violin 1, violin 2, and then there's a blank space and an extra bit here. And that's because we've got some Divisi sections going on. So part way into this violin 2 part, if you choose the staff and right-click, for the staff options, you can choose things like Divisi. And for the Divisi change options, you can then specify how many sections you want to divide, whether it's a soloist or a section, what's going on with the Divisi. Dorico will automatically add you a second staff at this point. And then whenever you don't want it again, we do want it at the moment, but whenever you don't want it, you can just go to Restore Unison, and it will remove that staff again for you automatically and work out where on the pages they should be. So it will automatically add a staff and remove a staff as and when it needs to, as well as doing all the condensing. So if I go back to page view and we turn back on the condensing option, you can choose whether you want the Divisi, I'm going to turn the labels off for a second, whether you want the Divisi to be on 2 staves at this point or 1 staff. And you can choose a different option if you're in the parts. So let's say in the, I should have done it the other way. Oh, my parts are all in the wrong order. I've obviously been playing with this file before. So you can choose a different option for the parts than you do for the score. Oh, that's a score without brass. Here's the condensed one. So you can choose different options. This one is completely condensed down to 1 staff, whereas the parts might be 2 staves. The Divisi label has happened automatically because that's where the Divisi started. It's different for different instruments here. You can choose all sorts of unique points where all of those happen. And so you can make a condensed score with all the right options and all the parts with all the right options using the condensing and the Divisi features in Dorico. So more about that maybe in another session. There are some that we've already done, but just so that you know those kind of things exist. Another option that when I asked people what do you really like in Dorico, if you've only been using it recently, one person said cues, and they've been using this a lot for drum parts as well. In this particular case, I'm going to show you orchestral cues in this piece. So very quickly, here is Schubert's 8th. He hasn't finished it, neither have I. Or maybe no, I haven't finished this one. Now, in this particular file, at various times you might want some cues. So I'm going to click on this little ear symbol here. And you can have Dorico to suggest where the cues should be. So it will find all the people who haven't been playing for 30 seconds and press update. And now it's showing me in red on the score, and I can choose these options here, and it will jump to any of these sections, and it's suggesting these people haven't been playing for a while, they might want a cue. So for example, in the violas in bar 277 down here, they haven't been playing for 45 seconds, they might want a cue. So let's say we're going to cue from the first violin parts. So you just choose the viola part. So let's say we'll just choose these 5 bars here. And you can use the options on the right hand side in the menu up here for create cue, and there's a shortcut which is Shift U. You start typing the instrument you want to use, choose violin 1, and now the red highlight's gone away, and in violin 1 it's going to get the notes from violin 1 and put them into here automatically. But it doesn't do it in the score because you often don't want cues in the score. You can have them if you want them, but the default is to not. When I press W to go and look at the viola part, then in the viola part here we have the cue. So these notes are dynamically grabbed from the violin part. If the violin part now changes, the cue will also update. It's also made them small automatically. It's given us a different clef because of the clef change for the part we're in. It's also added the rests underneath automatically, so it's made those. You can change the size of this cue. If it was slightly too long, slightly too short, you can change it with shortcuts. You can drag these little drag handles if you want to change the size. You can choose the cues. You can change the options. If you wanted the slurs from the cue, you can bring the slurs in automatically. If they had lyrics, if they had dynamics, you can bring those in. If you didn't want the clef change, so don't bother with the transposed clef, really the violas will cope, that's fine. If you need to shift it an octave to bring it into the staff, you can do that and it updates the label automatically for you. If you want this to be a rhythmic cue, so for drum parts, like I said, somebody was using these for drum parts, you can choose a rhythmic cue. You can say that the rhythmic cue has rhythmic slashes if you want to. And again, it's dynamically grabbing these from the violin part, so you don't need to edit these notes individually. You can just change the violin part and it will all update automatically. So things like that, the cues feature in Dorico is something that is quite different in how it works, really quite useful and quite powerful. And somebody said, this is what I really wish I knew on day one because it's what they really needed. So I wanted to pass that information on from them. There's things like multi-rests. You don't need to create multi-rests, they just happen automatically. Just write in music in the score. When you switch to the part, multi-rests are on automatically. There's an option to turn them off if you don't want to. There's options to split multi-rests where you want them, but you don't have to actually create a multi-rest item or anything like that. There's options such as lyrics. Let's say we're going to let's do this one. Let's go to nobody's got any. Oh, we don't have any singers. That's what we need. So let's just say we're going to add a voice part. You can add a soprano or an alto or anything else if you want, but I'm just going to say a generic voice. So our generic voice singer is going to need some notes. Oh, there's something I forgot to... also, when they get quite high, you'll see you've got dark red notes and bright red notes, depending on if they're out of range or in their professional range. I forgot to say, when you're doing our default note input, by the way, if you are entering a note and you want to move on, you can use the arrow keys. You can also just press the space bar, which is a very quick way of doing it because it's a bit more like typing then. So anyway, I'm going to add some lyrics. So choose a note, press Shift L for lyrics. You can enter the... let's put hyphens in. Let's put a space for melismas. You can also, if you just press the up arrow, you can enter a chorus and it will italicize that. If you've got more than one verse of lyrics, you can press the down arrow. This is verse 2. You can put numbers on them automatically if you want to. The chorus is now italicized in the middle. There's options for lyrics that are the translation lines of lyrics. If you want to edit the whole line of lyrics, you can right click on it and you can go to the lyrics option and edit the whole line of lyrics. So if you've made a typo, let's say you can enter the you can enter the lyrics. So you can edit the whole line of lyrics if you need to from that way, or you can just press enter and edit this individual word. So they're quite flexible in what they can do. There's also lots of options in the properties panel for lyrics and whether they're whole words or want to be left aligned, right aligned, all those kind of things. These of course are all overrides because in the library engraving options there's all of the default settings that you can set for how you want your lyrics to sit underneath the staff, the spacing, all those kind of things. And when you've set all of your options, choose Save as Default. What happens if you've done it in a different project? There's also a library manager. The library manager here you can import and export your options. So it's a bit like house styles or all of your settings. You can have Dorico show you the differences between the factory settings and your settings. You can drag in a Dorico project into here, and you can import various other people's settings. You can do it very granularly because it will tell you all of the exact options that you're importing, and you can choose just that one option that you want to import, or you can import all of the options. So if you've set it in one project, or somebody else has set it and you want to import those settings, you can bring those in as well, which is very, very useful. Now, when you're importing things into Dorico, you might want to set up a template and then import your existing files. You might want to just open your existing files. So in Finale, the best option, and Sibelius, the best option is to export MusicXML. Because the MusicXML format has a lot of graphical information in it about actually where things sit and what happens. Unfortunately, it's not really possible to import a MusX file into another application, or a Sibelius file for that matter, because the file format itself doesn't actually have the information that we need in it. It just has information that that particular application needs. So a MusicXML file is a much better option, and Michael Good, who worked at Finale, was saying, well, yeah, a MusicXML file is the best option. We've done on our blog, Daniel wrote an article recently. Here is the homepage about translating. Oh, there we go. Translating Finale projects to Dorico using MusicXML, and there's various information in this one about archiving, and you don't need to move all of your projects. Really, it's just maybe if you're working on something and you need to make a revision of it, or you've started working on something and now you want to try it out in Dorico, then that might be a good option to do. But otherwise, continue using Finale, and making small changes to things in there if you need to. But there's options when you do want to translate a project into Dorico. There's also some troubleshooting problems that you can set in here. Now in here, there's also a link to a guide for how to export the projects. So in Finale, when you want to export your projects as MusicXML, you can use this option for translate folder to MusicXML. So you can translate lots of files that you've got in Finale into MusicXML. Use the compressed option for the smaller file size. There's compressed and uncompressed file sizes. That one will also add all of the part layouts into the compressed file and any graphics that were in that file. So compressed is the better option to use. Now, we don't actually use the part layouts in Dorico at the moment, but you may want those as for a backup purpose anyway. So use the compressed option and export those, and then you can import them into Dorico. Before you import them into Dorico, have a look in the preferences. On a PC, it's in Edit Preferences. And there's a MusicXML import settings. Now in here, what Dorico is doing is there are options, for example, note duration, stem directions, beam groups, various other things, and you can tick or untick the box. If the box is unticked, then Dorico will use its own options. So, for example, if you haven't put in all of the correct beam groups that you wanted, or the tie placements, or the articulation placements, if you haven't put them all in Finale, then instead of putting them in Finale and then importing them, just don't tick the box, and we will use our options to put the articulations in the right place. And we also have options in our library menu in the engraving options for articulation placements and various other things as to where they will go, this, how far away, above or below, all those kind of things. So if you don't tick the box, Dorico will use its options for how they work. If you've spent loads of time on these options and fine engraving those to where you want them to be, tick the box in here, and Dorico will then use the options from the XML file that we've got from Finale. So if you've finished lots of things in Finale, make sure you've ticked all of these boxes, and we will then make sure that we're importing those options from the XML file. So apply those changes, press close on this dialog, and then all you need to do is import it. And you can either import it as a new project, so you can just go File, Import, MusicXML, and it will start a new project and import your music. Or if you've already set up a template in Dorico or started a template, you can go to File, and you can import the music into your project. So, sorry, I've just said the same thing twice, haven't I? If you've got a template, File, Import, MusicXML, into your existing template. If you haven't, then you can just go File, Open. You can even do it from the hub or anything else. You can just say File, Open, and you can choose an XML file, and it will open it into a new project on your computer. So wherever you are on your computer, choose the XML file and open it. You can also drag an XML file into Dorico. You can do the same with MIDI files, of course. There's a very, very good MIDI editor in Dorico with the key editor, but when you first import your files, there's also a very, very good MIDI import section for importing things if you're coming from a DAW. So if you're used to working with, I don't know, Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic, and working into Finale in MIDI, then you can also, of course, do all of that into Dorico as well. So that's one of the options. I'd also say if you're, for backup purposes, make sure you're also making PDFs. So from Finale, there's a batch option for batch exporting graphics, and you can also use that option to export PDFs. So you can batch export your projects. You can just say, here's a folder of Finale projects. It'll open each one, export a PDF, and close it again. Open the next one, export the PDF. And that means you're then very well set for, you've got something you can print because you've got the PDF. You can still edit the original Finale file. You've got the MusicXML file so that you can import it into Dorico or anything else. There's over 200 programs will import an XML file. So you're very well set then for what you need to do going forward if you need to edit any of those or print any of those projects. In Dorico itself, you can import and export MusicXML, so you can export XML from Dorico as well. And in the print menu here, you have all of your layouts, and you can choose one or more, so just hold down Shift if you want all of them. So you can choose one or more, and you can set then on the right-hand side whether you're going to printer or whether you're going to graphics. And graphics is where PDF is. So if you want a PDF of your project from Dorico, then in here you can just choose the PDF option and export that, and there are options for whether you want it to be mono or include color options, the destination folder, the job type, paper size, all of those kind of things. You can set those if you need to, but that's where you'll find the PDF option. You don't need to go to print a PDF. You can go to the print menu here, and then you can just go to graphics and export. There are other options for graphics as well if you want to export everything. If you're only exporting little sections of music, then in engrave mode there's also a slices tool, and you can make slices of individual bits of the music, and you can just export these as PDF or various other file types as well. So if you only need a little graphic, then that may also be a useful option. So you can import and export MusicXML, you can import and export MIDI, you can import so you can import from other programs. You can also export if you need to as PDF. Dorico files are the same on Mac and PC, so if you start on a Mac and you give it to somebody on a PC or vice versa, they're interchangeable. They're also the same on the iPad, so if you use the iPad version of Dorico, and try it out. It's a free download to start off with. You can write for up to 8 players or 12 if you use your Steinberg account, which is free. And then you can import it. It's the same file format, so if you put your file in Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever, email it to yourself, however you want to do it, then you can open exactly the same file format on the iPad as you can on the desktop version of Dorico. It also doesn't matter on the versions, so if you're working with somebody who's got an older version, let's say Dorico 3.5, you can give them a Dorico 5 file, they can open it in Dorico 3.5 and vice versa. The only problem you would have is if it was a very old version of Dorico that didn't have condensing, for example, that would just be turned off when they open the file. But the file format is the same. You don't need to save it as a previous version or a different file format or anything else. It's all the same file format between them all. Now, for other things, for the getting help, hopefully you've got an idea that Dorico can do lots of things that you want it to do. It's just maybe finding out how to do those things. So I'm very happy to run more of these sessions. There are also lots of other places that you can get help from. So, for example, if we go back to our Getting Started page, so blog.dorico.com/getting started. From this page, there's also at the bottom, it says shortcuts and more and various things, and there's a resources button. If you're on this page, there's also a resources menu up here. The resources menu has all sorts of other things that you might possibly want from Dorico. So there's all sorts of Tips Tuesday videos that we've done. There's the Discover Dorico sessions like these ones on our YouTube channel. There's also video tutorials you can buy from people, from courses. So there's one here which is from notationcentral.com. There's one here on groove3.com. There's also one here, which is actually the same as the Udemy one, although the link is slightly different. It's the same, it's Dr. Luke Carlson. And I know the Udemy one sessions are things that people have really liked. So click on one of those if you wanted to buy a video tutorial session. But if you're not interested in one of those and you say, well, you'd like something free, then like I said, on our Getting Started page, this Note Input tutorials is excellent for learning a lot of the basic things. This First Steps guide will teach you all sorts of things, including note input, page layout. It starts with a piano piece and voices and slurs and all sorts of other things. It then goes into blues, doing chords, and all those kind of things as well. So the First Steps guide is excellent. But some people that would like a third-party option, so there are some tutorials listed on here as well. There's also various other options. So there's a Getting Started PDF, a quick one. The quick reference cards are on here. There are trainers available that you can get training from if you want to individually. And if you're just looking for help, there's our online manual. Oh, try Dorico for yourself. Thank you very much. There's our online manual. There's also the Dorico forum. If you go to the forum, you can chat with our Dorico developers. You can suggest things, you can ask things on there, and the community and the Dorico team will help you out on the forum. If you prefer Facebook, and I know there's lots and lots of people in our Facebook group, there's a Facebook group. In fact, there's a new one now as well for people who are starting from the beginning learning, so they've come from Finale. So I'll add a link to that one in here as well. But the Facebook groups are also available in English, in German, French, Portuguese, Italian, Danish, Spanish. There's all sorts of languages, so you can get help in various languages from those. And they're a really useful community of people, and you can just ask questions like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this, but how do I do this? Also, Google it. Our help, because it's online, and our videos, because they're online, if you Google, how do I do dynamics in Dorico, you will probably get a very good answer to how to do those. You can also search our forum. You can also search the Facebook group, although Facebook search is a little bit interesting. But do a Google search. You will find that information, and if not, you can ask on any of those things. How to do things. How do I get going? There is a Getting Started with Dorico book that somebody's done if you want to use that. There are shortcut stickers. There's Stream Deck profiles. So if you're a Stream Deck type person, you want to use those, you can use those as well. I said there are playback templates. So if you're wanting to do something with a VST library, then the playback templates are there. And there are also other fonts that you can use. So obviously the Finale ones you won't need to get, because those Finale ones are installed with Dorico anyway, so you can use those. But if there are other types of fonts that you want to use, the Smoofle fonts for music, then you can use those ones, and there's some links to there as well. So blog.dorico.com/resources. There's all sorts of other resources and useful things that you'll find on that page as well. But start with the Getting Started page, because that has the succinct and useful videos and information that you want. And then if you're stuck, ask for help. We're a nice team. We really are. We're very pleased that you're here. And we're very, very willing to help. And like I said, if there's things that you think this would be really handy, get in touch with us on the forum and let us know. We are open to listen to various things. And like I said, for Note Input, there's already things in progress that we're hoping to make those even easier for you. Although the quickest method of Note Input really is with a MIDI keyboard. If that's your goal, then a MIDI keyboard, whether you do pitch before duration or after, a MIDI keyboard is going to be the fastest way of doing Note Input. So let me just have a quick look. It looks like the chat has been moving fairly quickly. So let me just see if there's anything that I need to answer from there. Bear with me. I can see somebody said T-shirts and mugs when? Well, we have done them at various times, but you'll have to find us in person. So it's you might have to come and find us in person at a session at some point. Let me see if there's anything I've missed as well from things. Those were okay. Let me just see. Are there? I think Daniel has been very busy in the chat. If there are things that we've mentioned that you want links to, then things like, I can see somebody has mentioned the batch graphics export. We can put details of that online on our blog. If you need to know those kind of things, then yes, just let me know. But yes, the batch graphics export. It's actually batch graphics export, and in there you can comment out the line for graphics export, because PDF is one of the options in there. But I can give you more details on that if you need it. If you want to get hold of me, email discoverdorico@steinberg.de. Now, if you all do it, it's going to take me a long time to get through these emails. So, but if you really can't find an answer to something, then or look for me on Facebook as well. So in those Facebook, in the Dorico groups on Facebook, then I'm on there as well, and I can answer questions to things. We can post images and useful things for help. So please do ask. Don't suffer in silence and then go, oh, but also don't try and use Dorico the same way that you use Finale or even Sibelius or anything else. We've put the shortcuts together in a way that makes sense intuitively if you've not used anything before. If you've already used another notation program, it doesn't mean that Dorico is going to instantly work in the same way, because we've put the shortcuts together in a way that makes sense. If you've got a student using Dorico and they've never used any other notation program before, they will fly with it, because once you've learned one shortcut, it then rolls into a whole bunch of other things that work in the same way. Which also means if you change some of our shortcuts, you might be making more work for yourself, because if you change some of the shortcuts, they're not going to work in the same way as something else. Now, I understand that you know how something works in another program, so you might want to change some of the shortcuts for note input or something else. Just be aware of those things, when you're changing them. Our shortcuts have been put together as a whole to make very good sense. So, look out for those kind of things as well. I can see Lily's also in the chat as well, answering some of the questions. So it's scrolling past faster than I can read it right now. Let me just see. Is there anything I need to comment? Let me just see. If you can't, there are some things in other languages, some videos. So I know there are some in Spanish, and there's some Portuguese videos and various others. If there's a language that you can't find, then I can probably find you a trainer in that country, or somebody to help. There may be a Facebook group with it as well. We may be able to help. So get in touch and let me know. Somebody said compatibility. We talked about file formats. I don't know if that was, it's the same file format between them. Somebody's just said about tuplets. Let's quickly do that. So, tuplets in Dorico. I'll do it this way. Let's say for our flute over here, I'm going to press enter to turn the current line on. I'm going to choose 5. I'm doing it the Dorico default way to start off with. So I'm going to choose 5, so I've chosen the note duration to start off with. The tuplet button, because they're a ratio, it's the semicolon button, so I'll press that and I get a popover. Now there is a button over here for tuplets as well, which we'll use in a second. But I'm going to press semicolon and I'm going to say 3, press enter, and now I've got a tuplet, so I can enter 3 notes. I can put those in. You can also do it. Let's do it again over here. So turn the current line on. You can use this button here, and that will also say a tuplet. And it did these tuplets as quarter notes because quarter note was selected. So if you didn't want those, you just press undo. If you chose a note value over here first, and then choose the triplet button, then you get triplets, which is all very good as long as you wanted triplets. Oh, also triplets the tuplets are sticky. So by that I mean if you do this and you put them in, then they will just keep going. Oh, and by the way, you can do tuplets over bar lines as well, so be careful. But you can very easily do tuplets over bar lines. If you want other ratios, so let's say again we're going to go for 8th notes and I press my tuplet button, then I can so for example 7 in the time of 4. So 7:4. And so now I can do those instead. So you can choose any ratio you like. So you choose your note value and you can enter them that way. You can also do it if you're doing pitch before duration. You can do it in a very similar way. You can also do nested tuplets. So now tuplets are on. You can also put nested tuplets inside them if you want to, just by starting even more tuplets inside. It really doesn't matter. You can also flip things. So if you wanted this, if I press F, then you can flip the brackets upside down. You can also do the same with slurs. If I choose this beam here, it selects all of the notes, press S, and I get a slur. If I press F, it will flip it the other side. Flipping slurs. There we go. So nested tuplets, no problem. Nested tuplets, no problem. So you choose the ratio. Now, if you like this button over here when you're doing note input, you'll see there's a little tiny triangle at the bottom. If you long press on it, or if you right click on it, so let me do that again, into Note Input, and I right click on this, then I get other options. So the common ratios are here, and this option at the bottom will let you specify your ratios. If you want to use an on-screen option for that, then you can do that. You'll also notice some of these other buttons have little triangles. So if you right-click on Insert Mode, there's 4 options for Insert Mode. There's a video you want to go and watch. If you right-click on this one, then we've got Voices, and you've got /voices and various options for voices in here. If you right-click on this one, you've got single, double-dotted, triple-dotted, and quadruple-dotted notes, if you want to use those. So and this one here, like the last one I'll do, has grace notes and whether they're slashed or unslashed grace notes. There are shortcuts for lots of those as well, but if you right-click on those, if you like using a mouse, then you get those options as well. So that's a quick intro into Tuplets, but Google it. How do I do Tuplets in Dorico? Anthony has done a video on it, and I believe it is in the Note Input series of videos here, Note Input tutorials. So anyway, any of these things, it's probably in those Note Input tutorials. If you're really stuck, I'll do a Zoom session. But because really, it's good fun, this stuff. But if you're really stuck, and you want to know about setting a particular shortcut or doing a particular thing, and I really recommend doing the first steps guide, because Lily has spent a long time on making sure she's very clearly shown what's going on. There is a video of me doing it as well, but it's a really good guide into how to do things in Dorico. And then find a piece of music somewhere in your room, office, wherever you are, studio, whatever, and duplicate that into Dorico. Don't just start with opening your XML files from Finale. Do that again later, but to get working with how things work, I'd recommend that first steps guide, and then finding a project that you want to do. Let's have a look. Somebody had mentioned about tempo changes. Let's have a quick look at one of those. So if we're entering a tempo, Shift T, I'm just going to type andante. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to do mistype it. And you can see it says Q for quarter note equals 80. So I can put those in. And there are options down here for whether you want the text shown, the metronome mark shown, you want it parenthesized, all of these kind of things. There are all of these tempo options over here, so you can just click them in from here. So this bar here, we're going to go to Energico. Now, all of these things, when they happen, they're graphical. But of course, when I switch to the key editor here, there's a tempo lane. And the tempo lane is showing me graphically what these tempos are. If you enter rits and rals and things, they will also show you a ramp in here. But you can also draw them. If you want to draw in some tempo changes, then you can do. Dorico won't show you them all on the score because that would be insane. It will show you the highlights that you want to know. This is nonsense. You don't want to do this. But for these kind of things, you can graphically see these as well if you want to make changes. You can see them when you choose one from exactly what the tempo is to various decimal points if you want to. You can even show the decimal points if you need to on the score. But those kind of options are all in there as well. I know I'm kind of cherry picking from the comments, but it's because they're really flying past. Yes, there's a 60-day free trial. Thanks, Lily, for that one. Anthony's in the chat as well. Cool, we've got loads of the team in the chat today. If you want to import, Anders has just asked, can we import WAV or MP3 files? Not directly, but if you make your MP3 file or your WAV file into a video file, then when you go to setup mode and you choose your flow, you can add a video file and attach it, which then means you'll get a video fader in the mixer so that you can set the balance of that one, and you can do transcriptions that way. If you have a look on our YouTube channel, we've done one or two of these where we've done transcriptions in Dorico using the video feature for that. So that'll be hopefully a good answer on that. You'd like a video on the batch PDF export. I'll see what we can do, either a video or a blog article or something. I'll see what we can do on that. Asian characters as lyrics, I think that already works. You can do Cyrillic, and I think you can do Asian characters when you're pasting them as lyrics. So pasting as lyrics, if you've got some text already in Microsoft Word or another text editor, you can copy that, and when you're doing your lyrics here, I'm just going to do select more to delete these. Select more is a brilliant option. So you get select all, select everything. If you choose one of something, so let's say we had these options, choose this one note here, press select more. It's in the edit menu. It's edit, select more. Shift Command A or Control on a PC. It's selecting more of the same voice. If I press the same shortcut again, it's selecting more of that voice in the whole system. If I press it again, it's selecting more of that voice all the way through this flow. Brilliant. If I select this and this one and do select more, then it's selected both of those voices in all the way through. So it's a really good way of doing a filter. I can just choose this beam and do select more, and I've got all of those notes. I didn't need to select everything and filter out that voice. If I select one of these notes in the lower voice and do select more, it selects all the other ones. Select more, it's brilliant. If I choose, let's say we've got some slurs. Choose a slur and press select more. It's selected the other one. Brilliant. Select more is really useful. So I did it for the lyrics and deleted them. If you've got text somewhere else, let's say here, I'll copy some text and into here I then go to lyrics, Shift L and press paste. Don't enter rests. So you just press paste, 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 and I think that works with lots of other languages and things as well. So my only challenge now is, when do we stop? This has been going on for an hour and a half. There's lots of things happening in the chat. Should we answer some of these now? Should we carry on with the chat? And we are doing another one of these sessions on Monday. So if you've missed anything, if you want to, we'll do another one of these sessions in a very similar option, very similar kind of setup and options. We'll do that on Monday. It's at a slightly later time. So it'll be 5 hours later than the current start. So this one was 4 o'clock London time, PM. It'll be 9 PM when we start on Monday, so that's Monday the 23rd. So if you want to come back for that session, if you think of some other questions in the meantime, you can email us, you can get in touch with us on Facebook and the forum and various other things, and you can also watch that session on Monday. If you want to say to somebody you know, you're in LA, this one's in a better time zone for you on Monday, watch this session, you'll find it really useful. That would be brilliant. Thank you very much. And then they can have their questions answered and that kind of thing. If there's anything that you're not sure how to do, entering double bar lines. Oops, he says failing to enter double bar lines. If you wanted to do things like repeat bar lines, if you wanted to do things like wings, if you want to do things like repeats where you just say end, and if you want to turn off these flow titles because they're getting in the way, there's all sorts of things that you can Google, ask for help for online. It's all possible things. Don't worry, don't panic. So I think what we will do, I think we'll probably end this session fairly soon. But like I said, you can get in touch with us still. We're around. The community is they're very nice. You can have all your questions answered, don't worry. And if you've got, but how do I, frustrations, that's fine. Tell us about them and we'll help. So I hope this session's been useful. If there's been particular things that you have done when you've been using Dorico that you say, I really wish I'd known this from the beginning. I really wish I'd known. I'd love to know that kind of thing as well. So you can either, on the Facebook posts that I put recently, you can comment on those about your favourite things. You can get in touch and discover Dorico at steinberg.de if you want to email me. And yeah, we'll answer all those, and I'll take those comments on board. If there's things you want to tell us, there's things you want to ask for, no problem. But overall, don't be frustrated. It can do lots and lots of the things that you need to be able to do. Just don't get frustrated with it, and we're here to help. So it's a very interesting situation. I don't think this happens very often in technology at all, but we're here to help if you need it. So. Please do get in touch. So thank you for joining us live. We've had a lot of people in this session, and lots of comments. So hopefully you've had those answered from the team who've been in there as well. And if there's anything else you think of that then please let us know. We're here to help. And if nothing else, I'll see you on Monday the 23rd at the slightly later time. So thank you very much.